Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Cox. I'm a member of the Netcapital team. Let's allow 1 minute for everybody to settle in. Thanks. All righty, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again. Today, I'm excited to welcome Scott Crumpler with PROCTOR360, as well as his team member, Kranthi Batula. So as always, this company is actively raising capital on the Netcapital platform. You can go directly to netcapital.com and search PROCTOR360, or you can go directly to netcapital.com/companies/PROCTOR360-Inc. Or you can click this link that I'm adding into the chat right now. Please do visit that website, check out the offering page, learn more, and if you feel so inclined, you can invest. A few quick housekeeping items. Please do use the Q&A feature built into Zoom. I know there is also a chat feature. It's tempting to use, but the Q&A feature makes it so much easier for me to track all the questions as they come in and get to as many of them as we can. And please do ask your questions. We do want to keep this interactive, as interactive as possible. So please do ask your questions, and I will get to as many of them as we can in that Q&A feature provided by Zoom. All right, with all that being said, please welcome me to welcome in Scott Crumpler from PROCTOR360. Come on in, tell us a little bit about what you're building.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I'm the senior marketing manager for PROCTOR360. Our company is an education technology company that focuses on building solutions for more secure, more flexible monitoring of online exam sessions. The remote proctoring market has seen a lot of growth over the last 10 years. It's projected to reach around $1 billion by 2025. And as a part of the overall e-learning market, which is projected to reach $1 trillion by 2027, it's important that that e-learning have the same credibility that in-person instruction and in-person classrooms do. The only way for that to be true is for the exams that we take online to have that same credibility, to make sure that people don't cheat, to make sure that the people who are supposed to be taking the exams are the ones actually taking them. And unfortunately, most of the industry has been using the same technology that they've been using for the past 15 years, just using that single webcam that's mounted at the top of your laptop or your computer screen. And for really high stakes exams, unfortunately, that's just not secure enough. And that has kept schools, at least leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic, from really adopting remote proctoring fully. It also doesn't allow for other types of exams that might be paper-based, but that otherwise could be taken remotely. PROCTOR360 was founded in 2019 in order to alleviate some of those problems. And the co-founders, Kranthi and Ganga, actually adapted the use of 360-degree webcam technology to design a patent-pending testing headset that can be worn by the test taker while they're taking their exam, so that the remote proctors can actually see every corner of the room where the test taker is taking their exam. So there's no place for cheating materials to be hidden. There's no way for them to be reading something or getting answers from somebody who's standing just outside the field of view of a normal webcam environment. They've also expanded their service offering to include a cloud-based software solution that allows test centers at universities to proctor their own students' exams using their own staff. Of course, a cloud-based software solution means that it's infinitely scalable without adding significantly to the overhead. Since the beginning of 2020, with the beginning of the pandemic, PROCTOR360 has been acquiring customers across various levels of remote proctoring where we provide the proctors, as well as with that cloud-based software solution.
No, that's fantastic. Thanks for that overview, and how appropriate right now as we're hopefully starting to come out of the pandemic, but e-learning is still here to stay. Looks like
Oh yeah,
very clearly. So
all of the growth, all the growth in education is digital.
it does. Yep, it does look that way. And then, so Kranti, let's welcome you in here. Can you tell us a little bit about your team? What are your backgrounds? Love to learn more about yourself and the team that you've assembled.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. And thank you for this opportunity as well. So kind of to start, my name is Kranti Batula. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of Proctor360. Basically, my background, I come from a strong engineering and design background. I've worked on product design on both the hardware side as well as the software side. And that's very similar to what I do right now for Proctor360. I have an active hand in developing the hardware and how it functions, as well as the end feel of the end user, as well as the software side, both in function as well as the user experience on the end. Next, I'll talk about Ganga, our CEO. Ganga has a very interesting story. He actually grew up in a small village in India, and he worked his way up to be able to go to engineering school there. He went to one of the top schools in India. And after that, he came to the United States, worked here, and eventually was able to start his own testing and training facility where he managed traditional physical testing centers. And that actually gives us our background from what we learned, operating physical testing centers, understanding their limitations as well as their benefits, and bringing those benefits to online proctoring, where the benefit of online is everything is remote, right? But adding that layer of security to the online environment was what we really strive to do, and having that testing center background really helped. Don Castner is another big name that I want to talk about. He came on early to the company. We actually met with him once in the middle of Tennessee at a coffee shop. We showed him one of the this patched together version of our first 360 headset. He liked the idea, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'm willing to join." So, prior to joining with us, he was a co-founder of ProctorU, which is one of the largest remote proctoring companies in the U.S. He had an exit in 2016, and then we met up with him in 2018, and he's been an early shareholder and advisor for Proctor360 since then.
That's great. So the team all comes from the market, understands the problem that needs to be addressed here. But for those who aren't as familiar, let's deep dive into the problem. What is the problem that Proctor360 solves?
Right. So you can imagine testing is absolutely everywhere, from K through 12 to higher ed to going and getting a certification for your job, even pre-employment tests that you need to take for typing or general knowledge. All those things need to be verified, and then the tests themselves need to be verified. Traditionally, what you do for all of those is go to a physical testing center, and you can see that there are a lot of limitations with that. You have to actively require students to drive to a physical brick and mortar center where there's limited capacity, and a student has to adhere to the test center schedule. This makes it hard for many test takers who need to take an exam to be able to do that. And you can imagine, with the pandemic coming in place, it makes it even harder for those students to be able to find available locations. And it makes it harder for the test centers themselves, because their economic model is completely hit. What would traditionally be a 10-person room now has to be a 5-person room, because you just can't fit people side by side anymore. So what we wanted to do was provide a solution. Well, we never saw COVID-19 happening, but we did see the transition to online happening. And what COVID-19 has only done is accelerated that growth, right? We're probably 4 or 5 years ahead of where we would have been if online testing or COVID-19 hadn't happened. So the real benefit of that is, what we're trying to provide is allowing test takers to take their exam from anywhere they want, at any time they want, with just as much security as a testing center.
No, that's fantastic. Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say that's such a huge part of it. as Kranti mentioned, the test center environment is designed around being completely secure. You're checking to make sure the test takers aren't bringing in cell phones or study materials with them when they take an exam. And you have a live human proctor there observing them while they take the exam. But as Kranti mentioned, number one, it was already something that was starting to strain capacity. You can't deliver enough education online if everybody still has to travel to a live testing center in order, to take a professional certification exam, or certainly with colleges now all creating, even Harvard has their own online school now. You want, with high stakes exams, you really have to have a secure testing environment. So the challenge is, how do you make somebody's bedroom or their kitchen or their home office just as secure as if they went to one of these live testing centers? And now that opens up education to everybody, that wherever you are, if you have a computer and a decent internet connection, not only can you get the education, but whatever credential you need to earn in order to advance your career or improve your life, those exams can be taken online securely.
It's an interesting thought, because I think a lot of people are talking about increasing access to education, but I don't think a lot of people have thought about that next step that you need, which is access to the actual professional skills or the actual profession as a whole. And there is always that barrier, almost always a barrier to entry in the form of those entrance exams. I was just
going to follow up, which is kind of crazy, right? You can learn everything you need to on YouTube, right? But you still have to drive to this one spot in like this busy city to be able to take your exam, and you can only take it at like a 4 p.m. on a Friday, something like that.
Right. And that's when everybody wants to take them. Everybody wants to take those exams on a Saturday or Sunday when they're off work, because that's when they're available, which means that it's just not available there's just not enough room for everybody. Even if they had the ability to drive to a testing center that was located close enough to them, that was sanctioned for a particular exam. And, with platforms like Coursera, who actually went public earlier this year, and edX, that have great ways to learn for free or practically free. That is the barrier that's still there. If you want to get a project management professional certification, for example, you can get that training anywhere you want online, but then taking that exam, you need to have you need to go to a testing center. You have to have a secure testing environment in order to actually get that certification. And that's what matters when somebody's trying to get that promotion or to advance in their career, get a better job. And in order for e-learning to have the social impact that we all hope it will, the remote testing industry has got to step up and start providing better technology, better solutions that can help sustain that growth. E-learning, as I think I mentioned a minute ago, is projected by analysts to reach a global value of $1 trillion by 2027. But how are they going to sustain that growth if remote testing technology doesn't keep up with that pace?
Yeah, that's a good point. And then you think about multi-day exams or exams that are offered so seldomly, like bar exams, for example. I see on your website go 2 times a year. That really inhibits folks. Wow, that's fantastic. And I know there are all sorts of wrinkles on trying to go digital with the bar exams over the last couple of years, but we don't have to dig into that. That was
well, I can't tell you which one, but we've had state bar organizations contact us about our 360 total view service. It's the first thing that's really made sense to them, where they can really secure the environment. And if they have people who have to have Disabilities Act accommodations, where they have to be able to take the paper-based version of the bar exam, and they can't, even if they're going to take it remotely, they can't take it on a computer. There isn't another remote proctoring company out there that can capture everything in the room when you're looking down away from the camera that would normally be pointing at you at your screen. If you're not looking at the screen to take the exam, those technologies just don't work. We have actually had some discussions about that. It's out there.
That's great. Definitely rooting for you. So let's dig deeper into the solution here. So tell us about this total view remote proctoring and how that's unique and flexible.
Do you want to take that one, Kranti?
Yeah, sure.
Considering you designed the headset.
Yeah. I mean, early on, when we started our initial prototype, it was very simple. It was just a standard headset with a camera on top. We've done a lot of work to be able to adapt it to look a lot nicer, but looking at the 360 view as a solution, kind of Scott was saying that when you get a screen capture of someone's computer and you get a 30-degree view with the front webcam, you don't know what's happening here or what's happening here, or if there's a door behind me, you would never know that, right? And what that does is it just opens up a lot of blind spots, and you can go on Reddit and you can look up how to cheat online proctoring, and there are very descriptive videos, and I'm on there every day looking if they mention anything about PROCTOR360. So far they haven't. I just want to put that out there. But basically what the 360 camera edition allows you to do is to close out those blind spaces. So we're literally capturing an entire 360 view of a test taker space. So we know whether if they're looking up, whether they're looking up at notes or whether they're just resting their eyes. Being able to have that video proof is extremely important because the biggest concern I have is, a lot of these students, they're paying thousands of dollars to go to college, and something like a academic dishonesty check that reflects very poorly on them. So if you're about to take a student to, basically student court or whatever, you better have valid proof. And a student would call out any organization on that, especially if they're paying that high of fees and tuition money.
Well, that's a whole nother part of the problem that I hadn't even really thought about is the academic integrity is so critical, but then there are those cases where mistakes are made. There were examples of people like sneezing during one of these exams and that kind of breaking the system, and they get an academic dishonesty check. That's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing for us was to provide enough information where a professor, an organization could make the right call at the right time. And it's really meant to benefit the student overall.
Right. It's as much for protecting the student who doesn't cheat as the few that try to cheat. Because as Kranti said, I mean, and actually during this past couple of years, there have been a lot of scandals with students working together to cheat remote proctoring systems. And if a story like that comes out, and and a university is called into question about whether or not they have enough integrity and security in their remote testing environment, well, then if you didn't cheat, you're suddenly saddled with that same, stigma that you came from a school that was easy, that was an easy A. Right. So the more data and the more views you give to a proctor. And by the way, our company software platform archives all of the data streams, the 360-degree webcam view, the view from the front-facing webcam, audio in the room, as well as the screen share, recording their screen activity. All that's archived per student, per exam session, so that months down the road, if somebody ever wants to go back and check, did this person, well, first of all, is it the person who was supposed to take the exam? Is that who actually took it? Because we actually have the ability to verify their ID against their own face on the webcam. Are they the one who took the exam, and did they do anything where they actually cheated? There have been problems with these single webcam companies where people were getting flagged, like you just mentioned, Eric, for a potential cheating event because they made a movement that the system recognized as cheating, and because there isn't enough information in enough field of view to determine that it wasn't cheating, you're at the mercy of that school to give you the benefit of the doubt versus the technology. So the more data you have available, to prove that you didn't cheat, the better.
And that's so important. And you mentioned, this is high stakes stuff, but the stakes have never been higher. The level of competition at the highest level has never been seen before, and it will probably continue to get worse. And so you talk about, in many respects, what feels like life or death, or success or lack of success in some regards. And that's just too high of a stakes to leave to 30 degrees, like you mentioned, Kranti.
Yeah, I mean, you can also think about it from another angle where, say we've talked to a couple of organizations where they've come back and they've said, we didn't adopt proctoring initially we just thought, we'd be fine without it. And all of a sudden they're reporting, our averages from last year, everybody's score went up by like 10 points. And, this is really hurting the kids that don't cheat, or, are truthful with their exam taking capabilities. And because even if they're fine with it, we're talking about college courses. These are scaled courses, these are where, a couple people that get a 95 to 100 can completely ruin the curve for everyone else.
Oh man, those curve breakers. Do not miss that. I do not miss that. Okay, great. Let's talk. You talked about the market a little bit in terms of market size. So let's dig a little bit deeper. The online or remote proctoring market. How big is that? What are we don't have to go into projections, but what does the market look like at this point?
2021. The current estimate for 2021 is that over $500 million is going to be spent on remote proctoring just this year, and that's up from 430 million last year. So it's growing at a steady clip. You said don't talk about projections, but that it's expected that global value is expected to double by 2025 itself. There are a lot of other areas where proctoring is suddenly becoming important that are outside of higher education as well. In fact, we have a Fortune 100 energy company that's in the nuclear energy field, and their engineers, their employees have to be certified regularly for their knowledge of nuclear energy, but that information can't leave the United States. And with COVID-19, they aren't able to actually go in and take the exams the way that they ordinarily would. They needed a way that they could make sure that that their engineers and employees and their staff could stay certified for this pretty critical knowledge. And these aren't students; these are professionals. But you talk about high stakes; it doesn't get much more high stakes than nuclear energy. So there's a lot of new areas that are reaching out, trying to find remote proctoring. Kranti mentioned earlier assessment exams you take through an HR department when you're applying for a job. Things like that now need to be delivered remotely. First of all, it's a lot more efficient as long as you can verify that the person who's taking the exam is the person who's applying for the job, and that they're not doing anything to cheat. That those scores accurately reflect their level of knowledge. So it's a pretty interesting industry that's seeing a lot of new areas of penetration. It's better. I mean, we can get into a little bit more about some of our other customer acquisitions later on. But yeah, I think as a matter of fact, I think probably the projections as strong as they are even a little bit soft, considering all the ways that people are now needing remote verification of identity for things like exams and other processes like onboarding employees and things of that nature.
So that's a really interesting point, because on the offering page, you talk about e-learning exploding, projected to grow to $1 trillion by 2027. But there's so much more than that when you talk about professional services and licensing in general. And even there could be just part of employee onboarding. Just what does their workflow look like for a couple of days, just to understand their ecosystem for a moment. Could be worthwhile for some of these companies. So, and Ganga, I'd love to welcome you in here. I know you're leading the charge here. But why don't I allow you a moment to come on in, introduce yourself, and you can share anything that you'd like to. We're just wrapping up the market size segment. We're about to move into the business model.
Sure, not a problem. I think Scott and Kranti can cover most of it, Eric. Thank you very much. So not a problem.
Okay, we'll continue as scheduled then. I meant a few words, no problem there. So while I'll open it up to one of you gentlemen, let's talk about the business model. How does Proctor360 make money? Are we shipping the headsets? Are they owning the headsets? Let's talk a little bit more about the process let's use kind of proctoring in terms of the traditional higher education example for now.
Sure, yeah, and let me first break it down really quickly. Proctor360 offers traditional single webcam proctoring, AI based remote proctoring, as well as human assisted AI or AI assisted human remote proctoring, and then also our 360 total view service, which incorporates the 360 degree testing headset. In addition to that, We have, as I mentioned before, the cloud-based software solution, which is remote proctoring, but allows testing centers to use their own staff to proctor their own students' exams. So there's a pretty broad range there of services that we've expanded to. But to start with, let's say the 360 total view service, there's three different ways that we, in general, will be approaching distributing that we currently are doing now. If it's a professional certification, something like that, where you're not really part of an academic environment, you need to take an exam online for professional certification, something of this nature. You can register for the exam online. You're shipped the headset in the mail with a return shipping label. You go through a couple of hardware checks the day before your exam to make sure that your computer is compatible with the system. You wear the headset while you take the exam, and then you just put it back in the box and ship it back. If it's part of a college or university system, we can lease them an inventory of headsets for the semester or for the year based on the volume that they think they're going to need. And then they can handle distributing the headsets to their students, whether that means going to their testing center to check them out, or whether they're issued a headset for the duration of a semester so that they can take their exams at their leisure and that they have a headset for doing that. At the end of that lease period, they can ship them back. We'll refurbish them and replace the ones that need replacing and do all of that process. The biggest thing we'd like to be doing going forward is really making these headsets available to even people in very remote areas. So if you're just in a fully online learning program, whether that's an online college or some kind of professional training program, being able to use these headsets and be able to get access to them where we don't have to ship one to you for every single exam. What we'd like to do, and what a big part of what this funding round is about, is producing a much higher volume of this next version of our remote testing headset and distributing them to public libraries throughout the country. You can imagine every little small town, they may not have a major university campus, but they will have a small little library. Everybody's got a public library. If you can imagine registering for an exam, you go to your local library, check out a headset. You can go find a private study room at the library or take it home. Take your exam with the headset and then just return it to the library, just like you were returning a book. So these are the ways that we can make sure that the hardware is not a barrier to somebody being able to use our 360 total view service. With the single cam proctoring, it's obviously much simpler than that. If somebody's taking an exam online, whether they're doing it through their college and we provide the proctoring, or whether they're doing a certification exam that's maybe lower stakes exams that only need maybe the single cam service, they can just register for the exam. They do a hardware check and identity verification, and then they take their exam and there's nothing needed. With the SaaS solution, PROCTOR360 already developed its software so that they could deliver remotely proctored exams. During the pandemic, they realized that all of these testing centers at universities around the country were having to close their doors. You had all of these proctors sidelined who were being laid off or were out of a job. They certainly weren't able to engage with their own students' testing experience anymore. So that's the point when Kranti and Ganga said, you know what, we've already built this software solution in the cloud. It already can scale infinitely because it's a part of Amazon's AWS infrastructure. Let's turn this into a SaaS solution where test centers can use their own staff to proctor their own students' exams. And of course, from a business model standpoint, that means that it's infinitely scalable for us to deliver as many exam sessions as we want without adding significantly to the overhead of the company. So we have a pretty broad range of ways to deliver remote proctoring, as well as distribute the headsets for the 360 total view service.
Got it. No, that's great. And we're a little bit past the halfway mark here. So I do want to remind everybody, shameless plug, you can go directly to netcapital.com/companies/proctor360-link. I've also added a link here into the chat feature where you can review the offering page. There's a whole bunch more information there. You can learn more about the team, the market size, the problem solution. There's even a deck built in there. And if you're so inclined, you can hit that invest button and join the team by owning a piece of PROCTOR360. I just added that link back in there. So I got to make sure that I remind the folks why we're here. And please do engage with that Q&A. We're here for you. Love to hear your questions. And so please do continue to engage with the Q&A feature built into Zoom. All right, that was my midway housekeeping piece. I'll continue along here. So Can we talk about progress so far? We've alluded to some of it, but let's take a deeper dive. What are some of the successes you've had? And then we'll look to what we think are future milestones around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in early 2019, PROCTOR360 conducted a small seed funding round so that they could produce their initial batch of version 1 of the 360 Total View headset. And upon completion of that funding round, they succeeded. They got their that first batch of headsets produced, and then started going after clientele. Around the beginning, the early part of 2020, we first started acquiring customers that span across community colleges, universities, online schools, including a law school, professional certifications, and even commercial entities. As I mentioned, the Fortune 100 nuclear company. So that's a huge milestone. They didn't just, they went from 5 handmade prototypes to production-ready version of the 360 Total View service to actually acquiring customers across, as I said, academia and professional certification and commercial entities. And they built out after that. They expanded their software to a cloud-based SaaS solution. And we've continued to acquire customers into 2021. As a matter of fact, just since our offering went live on Netcapital, we've been very proud to have 2 new customer acquisitions. One of those is a company called FK Partners, which delivers training and exam delivery for finance professionals across the entire country of Brazil. And they were looking for a way to remotely deliver exams, which obviously have to be proctored for. In that country, just like in the US, there are many, many different types of finance professional certifications. If you're going to be a loan broker, an insurance broker, investment advisors, things of that nature. And they were looking for a software solution that worked with their testing engine, where they could deliver their exams and remotely proctor their exams all over the nation of Brazil, which is a country with a population about the size of the United States. So we're very fortunate to have been able to cultivate a relationship with them, and they became a customer I think, Kranti, you can maybe correct me here, but about 6 weeks ago. The most interesting one, one we're really most excited about from a prestige standpoint, is we just recently announced that the United States government, with the U.S. Department of State, is now a customer of ours. They have a new program where they are delivering the driver's license exams for the Office of Foreign Missions remotely, and they needed both exam delivery and remote proctoring for this new program. When somebody comes from another country as a diplomat and they need to drive a car, they don't get to go to the state that would issue a driver's license because they're not a resident. So the Department of State, the United States government, has to give them a driver's license. And in some cases, that means they need to take a written exam. So this was a new program of theirs, and we submitted a proposal that they were very happy with. And that's a 5-year contract for both exam delivery and for remote proctoring with the United States government. So we've had some tremendous success so far, especially with a pretty small crew of very dedicated people. I would say that probably some of our next milestones, certainly ones that we hope to accomplish with this funding round that we have on Netcapital now, is our next sales goal is definitely to hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue. That's kind of our next milestone. We've seen about more than 400% growth this year so far in our annual recurring revenue number, but I think $1 million is our next major sales goal. And then one of the problems we've had really for the past year is that 360 Total View service has seen an amazing amount of demand, and we simply don't have enough headsets produced to meet the demand from clients that we have waiting to use it. We have academic customers that are asking for more than we have available. As I mentioned, we have some state organizations and boards that are showing interest, but it's all about volume. And to get to that next level, we need to produce a very large volume of version 2 of the 360 Total View headset. So that's going to be another milestone that we're going to have to get past, hopefully with this funding round as well.
That's fantastic. Congratulations on that traction so far. Definitely makes me want a federal driver's license now. I got to look into that. That sounds
I know, right?
That sounds way cooler than my.
I just want to know. Yeah, I want to know how you get. When you get written tickets, how does that work?
I think you just get to ignore them at that point, Scott. No, I'm kidding.
That's what I do now, but don't tell anybody.
That's really great. And I'm wondering, I know you guys have high demand for the products. I'm not sure if you have a headset around, if anybody could demonstrate one of them.
If you'll let me get a step away from the camera, I can grab one. If maybe you got a question for Ganga or Kranti, I'll be right back.
That'd be great. That's fantastic. Yeah. While he's grabbing that headset, can we talk a little bit about, are you guys creating the hardware and the software, or are you guys using an existing infrastructure or some other kind of pre-made camera system?
We're actually creating our own hardware and software. So a lot of it is really in-house. We try to cut costs where we can in terms of, specific universal, headset parts. But for the most part, the key components, we're using our own.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Look at this. Oh, that's comfy.
Yeah, there we go. It's comfortable. It's lightweight. It has a small module here that's part of the, that handles part of all of the data feeds that go through it. There are earphones so that the remote proctor can speak to the test taker if they have a question or they have some issue and they need to speak to the proctor. The software that you just asked about is something that PROCTOR360 has developed, and there's a function within the software that allows them to have either a live text chat or speak directly to their proctor that's monitoring their exam session. So the microphone, of course, works for that, as well as allowing the remote proctor to monitor the audio in the room. Because you can imagine, even if you could see everything in the room, if somebody was standing just outside the room and reading answers to you, that wouldn't be secure. So with the microphone, you have both the ability to communicate with the test taker and monitor any audio in the testing environment. Of course, they have the earphones so that they can hear the remote proctor or hear some audio portion of a computer-based test. And then you have the 360 webcam, which is integrated right into the top of the headset there. You can see that there are 180-degree lenses on each side, and it creates two hemispherical views that, when stitched together, create a complete view of the entire environment. And it all communicates through a single USB 2.0 plug. So you don't have to have an especially demanding computer in order to use it. It's a lot of data to be going through a single stream, but Kranti and Ganga work very hard to make that as universal, a data protocol as possible.
Absolutely.
Team, that is so exciting. I'm so glad I asked to see it. That is so much more compact than I thought it might have been. That was very exciting. Congratulations on that build.
Yeah, if you saw the original handmade prototypes, it was definitely clunkier, but yeah, they did a tremendous job making it very lightweight, very sleek. It's very comfortable to wear. But there is the option also, if for whatever reason you're not comfortable wearing the headset, we ship it with the stand so that you can also just set it on the desk next to you on the stand. It still provides a 360-degree view of the room. And if you're using a paper-based exam, that might even be a better way to do it. Am I wrong about that, Kranti?
Absolutely. For paper-based exams or hybrid exams, we ask them to put it on the table. That way we're capturing the entire desk environment and the student can just focus with their head down, writing up their exam. So we give a lot of options, as you can tell, even with our service offerings, our goal is really to meet what the client or the end user would really be looking for.
That is great. And a question's coming in here. So I know that you mentioned PROCTOR360 was also in contact with some companies to monitor their employees. When personal information like Social Security, bank account numbers, and identity are involved, can you go into that as a potential new set of clients?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Obviously, he's been paying attention to some of the information we're putting out. Thanks for that, Brian. That's another area that, as I mentioned when I talked about the new markets for remote proctoring. Imagine every time you've ever had to call a customer service agent. And believe it or not, those people are not all sitting in cubicles in one big call center anymore. They're doing that remotely. They're located all over the country. They're part-time jobs where people are logging in from their laptops. And you might be giving them your Social Security number. You might be giving them your credit card numbers, your bank account information. It's just as important for those companies that provide outsourced, what they call BPOs, that provide outsourced call agents, It's important for them to be able to monitor those employees during their work sessions to make sure that when they're taking credit card information, they're not also scribbling it down on a piece of paper while they're taking it down. I mean, that's a huge fraud liability. And so there are, we've even had interest from some BPOs who are interested in the 360 total view proctoring, not for exams, but just so that if they have a high stakes client where they know that that client company's customers may have to call in with sensitive personal information, they want to be able to give that client company the reassurance that their agents will not be stealing any of that information, and that it will be completely, archived and cataloged every single work session that an agent does on behalf of that customer. So that if there's ever any question later, if there's ever a data breach, if there's ever a fraud event, they can always go back and say, who did they talk to? Let's pull up, when did they think the fraud event happened? Let's pull up their sessions and see whether or not they wrote anything down, if anything looks like, like it might be suspicious activity. So I'm glad he asked that. There are a lot of uses for this type of technology that just extend beyond, traditional academic testing.
That's such a good question, Brian. It simultaneously made me more excited about this offering and more concerned about my current practices. But it's great because it does remind me of my identity theft provider gave me a free shredder as part of the service, because obviously that makes my liability go down if I'm shredding my sensitive documents instead of just chucking them into the trash can. So I could see an opposite situation where premiums go down if these types of people are being better monitored. So I think that's a really exciting application for the product. Thanks for that question. Could also potentially be used in the future to prosecute offenders as video proof for the police. Yes, so just building evidence, a mountain of evidence and data, all stored on the AWS cloud. Yep, that's a good point. Please continue to engage with the Q&A in the chat. That's exactly the type of stuff we're looking for. So thank you so much for that. A couple more moments here. Can we talk a little bit about the competitive landscape? You mentioned that there are players in the space that have been doing remote proctoring for a bit. But this new vantage point, and I did that kind of on purpose here, of being able to control, to view and assess the entire environment from a visual and audio standpoint, that feels unique. Are there other players in the space doing that?
No, as a matter of fact, the 360 total view service and the use of 360-degree webcam technology with the headset is currently patent pending for PROCTOR360. That patent's awarded. There won't be another remote proctoring company that'll be able to use 360 webcam technology for monitoring exam sessions. The remote proctoring market is pretty fragmented, which makes it ideal for a young company with better ideas to penetrate. When you have a market where there's only 2 or 3 or maybe 4 major players that are dominating the market, it's a lot harder to penetrate. And I mean, just in any market. But in remote proctoring, there are 10 or 15 major companies. Nobody's got more than 20% market share. And I think that might be the single largest, might have 20%, 25% market share. There's a lot of companies out there with 3, 5, and 10% market share, which makes it makes it a lot more wide open in terms of being able to penetrate as a new company. As I mentioned before, most all of the competitive landscape is still just using single webcam technology. Now, if you Google remote proctoring, what you're going to find are a lot of news stories about AI over the past year with the pandemic. The newer players to remote proctoring have used artificial intelligence rather than a human proctor to proctor exams, which of course makes the company's overhead lower, and it's and they can do a lot of exam volume without it costing very much. But there have been some challenges with that. I'm not going to call out competitors' names, but there are questions surrounding the type of information, biofacial features that you're capturing from students during an exam that they may not, have given you permission to do that, but they're forced to take the exam using that remote proctoring service, things of that nature that have been called into question with privacy. But again, before I get back to that, the AI-based competitors out there are still just using that single webcam view. They're only looking at this narrow field of view in order to decide whether or not proctoring is happening. And unfortunately, if you do Google it, you'll see there's plenty of stories out there about the problems that schools and state licensing boards have had with trying to use that type of service for high stakes exams. PROCTOR360 has developed AI as a low stakes option for remote proctoring, but we do things that are different in a couple of ways. Number one, our system is a closed system that's already developed its ability to recognize the potential cheating behaviors. It doesn't learn off of a test taker. In other words, we don't have the right, and then we're a very privacy focused and security focused company by nature. We don't have the right to take from a student any personal data or any personal information or invade their privacy in any way just because they have to use our service to take their exam through their school or for whatever certification they might be taking. The system is completely a closed loop system. The other thing that it does is it doesn't interrupt the exam session. If it's completely AI auto-proctored with no human involvement, it just creates timestamps that say this is where a potential event occurred, and the instructor or the test coordinator or whoever it might be can go back to that single student's exam session and look at the video during those timestamps and decide for themselves whether or not they thought something was really happening there. But we also offer human proctoring with AI assistance. What that allows us to do is offer proctoring for exams at a lower cost, because we can have proctors proctoring more exams at once, because the AI will sort of be watching everybody with a certain level of accuracy, and then it will alert the human proctor that this student might be doing something that's suspicious, and he can switch over to that session specifically to check and look at the incident. And they can either, if they needed to, they could intervene during the session, or they could just simply make a note of it during the exam session that this was a potential incident. The idea is that it should never interrupt the test taker's experience taking their exam. I think that's probably one of the things that we do that's pretty significantly different with the use of AI. But again, like I said, going back to the competitive landscape, they're still all just using that single camera input. Most of them, the ones that have been around for a long time are mostly just human proctor based and tend to focus on one area. We kind of approached it from the very beginning of, we want more and better security. We want to make remote proctoring available for more types of exams, and we want to give schools and institutions more flexibility. A lot of what schools have had to do, especially during the pandemic, when they had to use remote proctoring, but their proctoring vendor only provided one type of proctoring. So that might not have worked for all the different types of exams that the school might have, particularly things that are in engineering or in mathematics, where some portion of the exam might be paper-based, even if it is, an online, exam delivery. So by having that flexibility, it's the reason that we offer all different levels of security, as well as also offering a software solution so that testing centers at colleges and universities can proctor their own students' exams using their own existing staff. That's something you're not really seeing very much of in the competitive landscape for remote proctoring either. There are a couple of companies that are kind of trying to do it, but when you really look into it, it's kind of just a few tools that are cobbled together, that they're sort of just telling customers that they have to install this plugin and do this and do that to try to make a software solution where one doesn't really exist. So those are some of the key differentiators between what we're doing and most of the competitors out there.
That was incredibly helpful. And you talked about the AI component, and that leads to this question that just came in. Do you have technology to perform image and video processing to identify suspicious behavior? If not, how far away are you from developing it?
We do, and Kranti, you probably should take that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like Scott was mentioning, we do have AI technology. Right when all these privacy concerns were, when students were coming out and stating their concerns, was also when we were developing our AI and our AI system. So it allowed us to kind of look at the end user, see, okay, where are their concerns, And
Pre-focus grouping.
yeah. And so we were able to view their concerns and then build our solution around that. So the biggest concern for a lot of students is privacy. And you can imagine that's on a higher scale when you're dealing with K through 12 students too. So one thing that we did was, like Scott was mentioning, it's a closed loop. We're not collecting anybody's biometric information and putting it back into the algorithm or anything like that. The other thing that we're doing is we're looking for very robust actions, clear actions that are violations from a testing space. So if there are multiple people present, if you're present or not present, or if a different person than the person checked in is present. Those are the types of flags that we're looking for. They're simple, but they're very clear indicators that this is a violation of an exam, right? So that's in place. Long term, what we are looking to do is introduce that same AI technology to the 360 camera, where it'll have the capability to use that in conjunction with that added comprehensive view.
Got it. And you mentioned the patent pending. Congratulations on that. And I imagine that type of defensibility from the IP will be critically important. But that also leads to this, one of probably our last questions as we're wrapping up here. What do you see as a potential exit for investors? I know you said there's a handful of players in the space. Consolidation is making its way into every industry. If you are awarded that patent, I think all of the other players become a pretty reasonable exit opportunity. But let's dig deeper into potential exits.
Yeah, I think if we're awarded that patent and we're able to to gain significant market share, certainly a roll up style event could happen, or an acquisition by just a larger, older remote proctoring company is possible. Where I see in the acquisition sort of pathway to an exit event for early investors, where I see the most exciting opportunities is with ed tech companies that have complementary services. Companies like I mentioned before, Coursera, edX, these online learning platforms that have college level training and classes to be able to offer remote proctoring as an integrated, part of that platform. That would be, to me, the most exciting kind of acquisition, and that's certainly one potential exit event. One thing that has been happening over the past couple of years with ed tech in general is that they're finding successful exits at IPO. I think I read an article from Reach Capital just a couple of days ago that talked about how in the previous 10 years prior to this year, there were only something like 2 or 3 or 4 ed tech IPOs. And this year alone, we've had 5. Coursera went public. Instructure, which develops the Canvas learning management system, actually went public for the second time. They went public in 2015. They were bought by a private equity firm for $2 billion. They went public again this year at a valuation of $2.9 billion. And I think their market capitalization right now is $3.9 billion. So in terms of the investor appetite, the publicly traded market investor appetite for ed tech right now is huge. Same thing with, I think Nerdy was a company that went public earlier this year. They do Varsity Tutors as their platform. They went public through a SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition company, meaning a company that's already publicly listed just to purchase a private company to make it public. So that kind of bypasses the IPO process and gets that company publicly traded even faster. That's certainly a potential pathway for us as well as now I think it was just earlier this year that direct listings on the New York Stock Exchange were approved by the SEC as well. So we have a lot of paths to public listing available to us, and the appetite for public investment with ed tech right now is really, really high. You can imagine getting to the point where we're at 20 or $30 million in revenue. That's private equity starts looking at you as an acquisition. You get to $100 million, you're talking about going public and seeing those 10x, 15x, 20x valuations. I think Coursera, as a matter of fact, is a good example. Actually, Coursera, Instructure, and Nerdy All right now, I think, are trading at like somewhere between 10 and 15 times their revenue. So definitely, it definitely public investment in ed tech right now is strong, and I think we accomplish what we want to over the next 3 years. Some form of IPO or other pathway towards being publicly listed is certainly a strong possibility, as well as some kind of merger or acquisition by another ed tech company.
Absolutely. And one question crept in that I'd love to sneak in here for a moment here. Can you go into your relationship with the founder of PROCTOR360 and his role in PROCTOR360?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about that. His name is Don Castner. He exited PROCTOR360 in, I believe, 2016, and we met up with him in 2018, and we showed him the initial version of the headset. And one thing that was very interesting to hear from him was, the proctoring industry has been looking for something like this for a while now. Everybody in the industry knows the limited capabilities of the single webcam, but no one's really ever come up with a solution until now. So we had come up with that solution. And, I think in that first meeting itself, we asked him if he wanted to be on the advisory board. He said yes in a matter of a few seconds. And then since then, he's a shareholder and he works as an advisor for us in PROCTOR360.
He's brought a lot of value as a veteran within the remote proctoring space. And of course, Ganga having owned and operated live testing centers brings a lot of that experience. And with Don having been at really right at the beginning with PROCTOR360, right at the beginning of the remote proctoring market becoming a thing, brings a lot of value in terms of just having helped us as a young company understand the customer acquisition process and where that low-hanging fruit is and what the value in higher education is for a product like this. And we've got some great video clips of him talking about the future of e-learning. He's got a background in education. He was the president of a small college in Tennessee. I hope I'm not wrong about that. If you're listening to this, Don, please forgive me. But he's got a background in education, and it means more to him than just dollars and cents. But he's got some great video clips on our offering page, actually, where he talks about the direction that e-learning and remote proctoring are going, as well as where he sees the value in the products that we're developing.
I think we're talking like broadly as a nation and as a world about advancing opportunities and getting more people access to education. So I love that initiative, what you guys are building here. Last minute here, if I can keep people on to stay over just a second, why is now the perfect time for anybody to go to netcapital.com, search PROCTOR360 and invest? Just kind of a closing remark.
Almost for the, just what I was talking about in terms of where investment in ed tech is going right now. When you look at companies that are trading as high and have as huge market capitalizations as they do when they're publicly traded, you have to ask yourself, what could you have done? I mean, I think, I want to say that Instructure went public this year in July at $20 a share, and even now after that, today it was trading at like $28 a share. But how are you able to invest in a company, in an ed tech company at an early stage where you're getting those those single digit share prices? You couldn't have done that with Instructure. You couldn't have done that with Coursera. You couldn't have done that with these major ed tech companies that were publicly listed this year. But it's part of the reason why we really thought that Netcapital was the excellent platform for this offering, because the individual investor who cares about the social impact that remote learning can have on people's lives and wants to participate at that early stage, the only way to be able to do that is with an equity crowdfunding offering. And with the huge appetite that public investors have right now for ed tech, having an opportunity like this with a company that has a unique product with a real vision and a path forward, and by the way, is already in the market. We're already acquiring customers. It's an excellent opportunity right now to get an investment in at an early stage.
Well, I love that, and it's been a pleasure working with the entire team at PROCTOR360. We're grateful for you choosing Netcapital to host this offering. I want to thank all the attendees who came in and asked their questions. As always, this has been recorded. I just added a link to our YouTube channel into the chat there. You can go and visit that, catch anything that you might have missed. And of course, please feel free to share that generally to anybody who you think might be interested in learning more and potentially joining the Proctor360 family. Let's go ahead and do away with gallon plastic Ziploc bags and passport photos. Let's move on. We're better than that. Let's get to the remote proctoring as soon as possible. So thank you so much again to the attendees. Thank you to the panelists, Scott, Kranti, Ganga. Thanks for joining. And everybody, please enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thank you.